The Memphis heat hung heavy even inside the small brick house on Audubon Drive. Elvis Presley, fresh from another whirlwind tour, sat in the cramped living room, a half-eaten plate of Gladys's fried chicken growing cold on his lap. He watched his mother Gladys fussing over a loose thread on the worn armchair, her brow furrowed with a familiar, quiet worry. His father, Vernon, was in the kitchen, humming off-key as he poured himself another glass of iced tea, the sounds of the radio a little too loud. Elvis loved this house. It was the first real home they'd owned, a step up from the shotgun shack in Tupelo. It was where he'd brought home his first gold record, where he'd practiced his guitar until his fingers ached, where his parents had celebrated every small victory and soothed every setback. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. Problem wasn't just the size, though it was small for 3 adults, especially one who was arguably the most famous man in the world. Fans congregated outside almost daily, sometimes hundreds of them, their screams piercing the calm. Gladys worried constantly, fretting about the mailman getting through, about the neighbors' privacy being invaded, about Elvis ever getting a moment's peace. Vernon tried to shoo them away politely, but it was a losing battle. The fences were high, but the noise was relentless. Elvis looked around the modest room. Every surface was cluttered with trophies, fan mail gifts. There was barely room to breathe, let alone truly relax. He remembered Gladys once sighingly, looking out the window at a particularly boisterous crowd. "I just wish we had a place, Elvis. A real place where we could stretch out, where folks wouldn't be staring." Not really. Gladys wasn't a complaining woman, but her wistful tone had etched itself deep into his heart. He thought back to Tupelo, to the desperate poverty, the tar paper shacks, the dreams that felt impossible. He'd sworn then to himself and to God that if he ever made it, his mama and daddy would never want for anything again. They had sacrificed everything for him, worked themselves to the bone, believed in him when no one else did. They deserved the world, and all he'd given them so far was a nice, but still too small house in a regular neighborhood. His fame had exploded beyond anything he or anyone could have imagined. Records were selling millions. Concerts were selling out in minutes. Movies were lining up. He had money now more than he'd ever dreamed of. And what was it good for if he couldn't use it to give his parents the peace and comfort they deserved? "Mama," he said, pushing the plate aside, "you doing all right?" Gladys turned a soft smile on her face. "Just fine, baby. Just thinking about what to do with these curtains. They're getting a bit threadbare." That was it. Always putting things off, making do. He knew she wanted new things, nicer things, but she was too humble to ask. Or maybe she just didn't see the point, knowing that even new curtains wouldn't solve the bigger problem of living in a fishbowl. "Mama," Elvis repeated, a sudden resolve hardening his jaw. "How about we don't just get new curtains? How about we get a whole new place?" Gladys stopped fiddling with the curtain, her hand hovering in the air. Vernon poked his head out from the kitchen, a questioning look on his face. "A new place, son? What kind of new place?" Elvis stood up, pacing the small room, his mind already racing. "A big place. A place with land where you can walk out in the yard, where you can have a real garden, Mama, like you always talked about. Place where you can just breathe." Gladys's eyes widened, a flicker of hope mingling with disbelief. "Oh, Elvis, that sounds lovely, but a place like that in Memphis, they cost a fortune, surely. And where would we even find one private enough?" "Don't you worry about the cost, Mama," Elvis said, his voice firm, full of conviction. "And don't you worry about finding it. I'll find it, I promise you. I'm gonna find you the finest home in Memphis. A place that's truly yours, a sanctuary." He saw the worry on Gladys's face slowly morph into something else, a fragile hope, a quiet dream taking root. Vernon, ever practical, just nodded slowly, his gaze thoughtful. He knew Elvis's promises weren't empty words. When Elvis set his mind to something, it happened. And this was more than just a promise. It was a mission, born from a deep, unwavering love for the two people who meant more to him than anything in the world. He would scour every street, look at every property, until he found the perfect place. His parents deserved nothing less. The dream had begun. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and late-night talks for Elvis. He'd entrusted the initial legwork to a few trusted real estate agents and his cousin Patsy, who knew Memphis like the back of her hand. But he insisted on reviewing every single listing himself, poring over grainy black and white photos and architectural drawings. He wasn't just looking for a house. He was searching for a feeling, a sanctuary, a dream made real. "It needs to be private," he stressed to his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, during a hurried call between recording sessions. "No neighbors peering in high fences, lots of land, and it's gotta be in Memphis close enough so Mama can still see her sisters, but far enough from the hustle." Colonel Parker, ever the businessman, was more focused on logistics. "Son, property like that with acres of land in the city limits, that's a rare bird, and it'll cost you a pretty penny at that." "I don't care about the cost," Colonel Elvis retorted, a flash of his usual determination in his voice. "I just want the best for my folks. They deserve it." His parents were naturally curious. Gladys would often ask, "Found anything promising, baby?" with a hopeful glint in her eye. Elvis would just smile and say, "We're looking, Mama. We're looking." He wanted it to be a surprise, a grand unveiling when the time was right. The initial viewings were disappointing. There were big houses, sure, but they were often in subdivisions, still too close to other homes. Some were grand but lacked any real warmth, feeling cold and empty. Others had the land but were too far out, almost rural, and Gladys liked being close to town. Elvis imagined his mother walking through these houses, her soft sigh of disappointment, and knew they weren't right. He pictured his father trying to relax in a yard that offered no true seclusion, and shook his head. "This one's got a big yard," Patsy said one afternoon, pointing to a photograph of a sprawling ranch-style home. "But the highway runs right behind it. No peace there." "Not enough privacy," Elvis agreed, tossing the photo onto a growing discard pile. "I need something almost like a fortress, but a beautiful one. A place that feels safe but also inviting." He spent hours late at night, sometimes after coming home from a show, with a map of Memphis spread out on the dining room table. He'd trace his finger along the streets, imagining different areas, trying to picture his parents living there. He thought about the kind of life they'd always dreamed of: simple pleasures, quiet moments, family gatherings, without interruption. The pressure of his career was intense. Album deadlines, movie scripts, touring schedules that would exhaust anyone else. The thought of finding this perfect home for his parents kept him going. It was a tangible goal, a way to channel his success into something truly meaningful. It wasn't about another hit record or a flashy new car. It was about getting back to the people who had given him everything. One afternoon, a new set of listings arrived. Most were the same as before. Too small, too public, too plain. But one caught his eye. It was a single, slightly faded photograph of a grand, white-columned mansion set back from a winding road. The description was brief. "Colonial-style estate, 13 acres, gated, built 1939. This one's on Highway 51. South." The agent's note read, "It's called Graceland. A bit grand maybe, but certainly private owner is looking to sell quickly." Elvis frowned slightly. Graceland. The name sounded regal. He looked closer at the photo. Columns were imposing, but there was something elegant about the house too. And 13 acres, that was unheard of for a property so close to the city. "Colonel Parker might balk at this one," he muttered to himself. "It looks extensive." But a flicker of curiosity, an almost magnetic pull, drew him in. He picked up the phone. "Set up a viewing for Graceland," he told his aide. "As soon as possible, just for me. Don't tell my parents yet. I want to see it first." He hung up the photo still in his hand. Could this be it? Could this grand, stately place truly be the answer to his silent prayer? The sanctuary he was so desperate to find for his beloved mama and daddy? He felt a stirring in his gut, a mix of excitement and trepidation. The search had been long and frustrating, but suddenly a new, powerful possibility had emerged. He couldn't wait to see it with his own eyes. The drive to Graceland felt different. The morning sun was already warm, but a cool breeze offered some relief. Elvis, usually fidgety in the car, was unusually quiet, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. He was accompanied by his cousin Patsy and his aide George, who had set up the viewing. No big entourage today. He wanted to see this place with clear eyes, to feel it without distractions. It's about 8 miles south of downtown, Patsy said, pointing. Just past Whitehaven. It's on a bit of a hill, they say. As they drove, the scenery slowly shifted from bustling commercial areas to more residential streets, then finally to wider roads with scattered, larger homes. And then, there it was. They rounded a gentle curve, and high up on a rolling green lawn, framed by tall oak trees, stood a vision. It wasn't just a house, it was a grand white-columned mansion, stately and elegant. 2 large, ornate, wrought iron gates stood at the entrance, partially open, hinting at the privacy within. A long, winding driveway curved upwards towards the house, disappearing behind a rise in the landscape. Elvis felt a jolt go through him. It was bigger, grander, more majestic than the faded photograph had suggested. The white paint gleamed in the sunlight, and the massive columns seemed to reach for the sky. It looked like something out of a dream or a classic movie. "Wow," Patsy breathed beside him, voicing the unspoken thought. "That's something else." Elvis didn't speak. He just stared, his eyes wide, taking in every detail. The sprawling green lawn stretched out on either side, dotted with mature trees. There was a peacefulness about it, an immediate sense of calm that he hadn't felt at any other property. The air felt cleaner. The world outside those gates seemed to fade away. He imagined his mother Gladys walking through those grounds, her face serene, picking flowers from a garden. He pictured his father Vernon sitting on a porch somewhere, maybe reading a newspaper completely undisturbed. The image was so vivid, so perfect, it brought a lump to his throat. "It's called Graceland," George said quietly, almost reverently. "It was built by the Toof family, named after their Aunt Grace." Elvis nodded, the name suddenly sounding right. Fitting grace. There was grace in the architecture, in the way it sat on the land. As they drove slowly up the long curving driveway, the house grew larger, more imposing. The front door, framed by 2 more elegant columns, looked inviting rather than intimidating. He could see a wide sweeping porch, perfect for rocking chairs and quiet evenings. He pulled the car to a stop in front of the mansion. The silence was striking. No fan screams, no traffic noise, just the gentle rustle of leaves in the trees and the distant chirping of birds. It was utterly, profoundly peaceful. He stepped out of the car, his feet sinking slightly into the manicured grass. He looked up at the house again, taking a deep breath. It wasn't just big, it felt like a home, a grand, beautiful home waiting to be filled with life and laughter. It wasn't cold or empty. It had a presence, a welcome warmth. "Well, Elvis?" Patsy asked, her voice hushed. He turned to her, a slow smile spreading across his face, a smile that reached his eyes and made them sparkle. "I think," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "I think this is it. This is the place, this is where Mama and Daddy are going to live." A wave of emotion washed over him, relief, joy, an overwhelming sense of rightness. All the searching, all the disappointments had led him here. This wasn't just a house. It was a promise kept, a dream fulfilled. He could feel it in his bones. This was Graceland, and it was going to be his family's home. Stepping through the imposing front doors of Graceland was like entering another world. The cool air inside was a welcome respite from the Memphis heat. Elvis took a deep breath, the scent of old wood and something vaguely floral filling his lungs. He was no stranger to grand houses, but this one felt different. It had a soul. The spacious foyer opened up into a grand central hall. To his left was the famous living room, long and elegant, with high ceilings and a majestic fireplace. Sunlight streamed in through tall windows, illuminating the intricate details of the molding and the polished parquet floors. This is called the music room. The real estate agent, a polite and understated man, explained, gesturing to the space immediately to the right of the foyer. It has a large built-in stage ideal for performances. Elvis barely heard him. His gaze was fixed on the far end of the living room. There, bathed in light, stood a magnificent stained glass peacock. A burst of vibrant colors. It was stunning, intricate, and utterly unique. He imagined his mother Gladys, her eyes wide with wonder, standing there, admiring its beauty. He could almost hear her quiet gasp of delight. He walked slowly through the rooms, each one revealing more of the house's charm. Dining room was large enough for huge family dinners, something his mother loved to host. Kitchen, while dated, was spacious and bright, full of potential. He pictured Gladys baking her famous banana pudding in that very room. Upstairs, the bedrooms were equally grand, each with its own fireplace and large windows. He found the master bedroom large and commanding, with a private bathroom and a dressing area. This will be Mama and Daddy's, he decided instantly. He imagined them waking up here, surrounded by peace and comfort, far from the prying eyes of the public. Pictured Gladys tending to her plants in front of one of these sunny windows, or Vernon relaxing in a comfortable armchair by the fire. On a cool evening, he thought of their current home, how small and crowded it felt. Here there was space, space to breathe, space to spread out, space to simply be. The sheer quietness was a revelation. No blaring car horns, no distant shouts from fans, just the gentle hum of the house and the sounds of nature drifting in from outside. He walked out onto the rear portico, overlooking the vast rolling lawn that sloped down to the woods. It was an enormous yard, a private park. He could see places for gardens, for quiet walks, for barbecues. A faint smile touched his lips. This was the peace he craved for them, the peace they deserved. The house wasn't perfect. Of course, it needed some modernizing, some personal touches. But the bones were magnificent. The feeling it gave him was even more so. It wasn't just a house. It felt like home. It felt like the culmination of everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed. He found himself standing in the center of the living room again, looking around. He could almost hear the echoes of laughter, of music, of family conversations. This house wasn't just grand, it was welcoming. It felt warm despite its size. "This is it," he whispered to himself, the words filled with a quiet certainty. "This is where Mama and Daddy will truly be happy." He imagined the day he would bring them here, their faces alight with surprise and joy. That image was a powerful motivator, stronger than any money or fame. It was about love, pure and simple. The real estate agent cleared his throat. "So, Mr. Presley, what are your thoughts?" "I want this house. Name your price. We'll make an offer today." The agent looked a little surprised by his decisive tone, but a professional smile quickly appeared. "Very good, Mr. Presley. I'll get the paperwork started immediately." As Elvis walked back through the foyer, past the stained glass peacock, a wave of profound emotion washed over him. He wasn't just buying a mansion. He was buying his parents a lifetime of peace, a sanctuary, a true home, and that, he knew, was priceless. Buying Graceland was not as simple as snapping his fingers, even for Elvis Presley. The agent's initial enthusiasm quickly gave way to the nitty-gritty of negotiation. The asking price was $100,000, a staggering sum in 1957. While Elvis had money, this was a significant chunk, requiring careful consideration. $100,000, Elvis? Colonel Parker's voice crackled over the phone, a clear note of skepticism in his tone. "That's a lot of money for a house, even for a grand one. Are you sure you need something quite so extravagant? Perhaps a slightly smaller, less expensive property would suffice." Elvis stood firm. "Colonel, It's not about extravagance. It's about privacy. It's about comfort. It's about giving my parents a home where they don't have to worry about anything. And it's got 13 acres. You can't put a price on that kind of peace. This is the one Colonel, for all his shrewdness, knew when Elvis was truly set on something. When it came to his family, Elvis's resolve was unwavering. "All right, son, all right," he conceded, a sigh audible through the phone. "But we need to make sure the title is clean, the property lines are clear, all the legal ducks in a row, and we'll try to get them down a bit, of course." The negotiations began. Lawyers were involved, land surveys were conducted, and endless papers were signed. Elvis found himself spending hours in stuffy offices far removed from the excitement of the stage or the film set. He didn't mind. Each signature, each legal document brought him closer to his goal. There were minor hitches, of course. A few liens on the property needed to be cleared up. The sellers, the two family, had inherited the estate and were keen to divest. But they also knew they had a valuable property. They held firm on the price for a while. "They're not budging much, Elvis," his lawyer reported one afternoon. "They know you want it. Best we can do is maybe come down a few thousand tops." Elvis thought about it for a moment. A few thousand wouldn't make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. The important thing was getting the house. "Tell them yes," he said. "Meet their price. Just get it done. I want to close this deal as soon as possible." He was also thinking about the practicalities of moving his parents. He wanted it to be a complete surprise. He'd talked to his cousin Patsy and his Aunt Delta, who lived with them, about helping to coordinate a secret move. They were excited by the idea, though a little nervous about keeping such a huge secret from Gladys and Vernon. "Mama's gonna faint when she sees it," Patsy giggled, a hand over her mouth. "You really think we can keep it from her?" "We have to," Elvis said, a grin on his face. "It'll make it all the more special. Just tell them we're going to look at another house, a bigger one, and then boom, Graceland." The weeks dragged on, filled with nervous anticipation. Every time the phone rang, Elvis hoped it was the call saying the deal was finalized. He knew the money was a lot, but he also knew it was worth every single penny. This wasn't just a purchase. It was an investment in his family's happiness, a tangible representation. The papers were signed, the money transferred. Graceland was officially his. It was March 19th, 1957. Elvis felt a profound sense of relief, followed by an explosion of joy. He wanted to shout it from the rooftops, to tell his parents right away, but no, he had to stick to the plan, the surprise. He went home that evening trying to act natural, his heart pounding with excitement. Gladys asked him about his day. "Just paperwork, Mama," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "Lots of paperwork." He poured himself a glass of iced tea, watching his parents in their small, cluttered living room. Soon, very soon, their lives would change. Soon, they would be home. His secret was safe for now, but the anticipation was almost unbearable. The biggest surprise of their lives was waiting just a few miles down the road. Keeping the biggest secret of his life from his parents was a thrilling, nerve-wracking challenge for Elvis. He felt like a boy again, planning a grand prank, but with a heart full of love instead of mischief. He wanted the reveal to be perfect, an unforgettable moment of pure joy for Gladys and Vernon. The immediate problem was their current house on Audubon Drive. How to get them out without suspicion. He couldn't just tell them, "Pack your bags, we're moving to a mansion." Gladys would have a million questions, and Vernon would be too practical, wanting to know every detail. The element of surprise was key. He enlisted his cousin Patsy and his Aunt Delta, who also lived with them, as his co-conspirators. They were sworn to secrecy, their eyes sparkling with shared excitement. "We need a story," Elvis told them during a clandestine meeting in the backyard away from Gladys's keen ears. "Something believable for why they need to leave the house for a day." Patsy, ever resourceful, chimed in, "How about we tell Mama and Daddy that you found a really big, fancy house you're thinking of buying, and you want their opinion before you make an offer, like a second viewing. But for them, perf. That way, They'll be expecting a nice house, but nothing like Graceland. We'll tell them it's a bit of a drive out towards the country, so they don't recognize the area right away." Aunt Delta, always pragmatic, asked, "And what about their belongings? We can't just leave them in an empty house." "That's where the real work comes in," Elvis said, leaning forward. "We'll hire a moving company. I've already lined one up. They'll be discreet. We'll tell Mama and Daddy that while they're out viewing this new house, we'll have a crew come in to clean and prepare Audubon for sale. That way their things will already be on their way to Graceland by the time they arrive." It was a bold plan full of potential pitfalls, but the thought of Gladys and Vernon's faces when they saw Graceland for the first time fueled his determination over the next 2 days as the secret preparations began. Elvis personally oversaw the planning, meticulously going over every detail. He instructed the moving crew to be extremely careful with his parents' cherished belongings: Gladys's china, set Vernon's old fishing gear, the family photos. He wanted Graceland to feel like home the moment they walked in. He even bought some new furniture and appliances for Graceland, knowing the old house wouldn't furnish the mansion entirely. He wanted it to be comfortable and inviting from day one. Consulted Patsy and Delta on colors and styles, trying to pick things he knew Gladys would love. He envisioned a bright, airy kitchen for his mother and a cozy den for his father. Gladys, meanwhile, was starting to get suspicious, but in a sweet, motherly way. "Elvis, you're awfully busy these days. And why are you always whispering with Patsy and Delta?" "Just work, Mama," he'd say, flashing his most charming smile. "And Patsy's helping me with some new song ideas." It wasn't entirely a lie. Patsy did offer good feedback on his music. Vernon, quiet as ever, just watched, a knowing twinkle in his eye. He seemed to sense something big was coming, trusting Elvis implicitly. The biggest challenge was maintaining the facade. Elvis had to act excited about this other house, describing its imagined features to his parents. He'd talk about the nice big yard and the plenty of space, trying to keep his tone genuine without giving anything away. Finally, the day for the viewing was set. Elvis told his parents, "Tomorrow, we're going for a drive. There's a house I want you to see, a really big one. I need your opinion before I make an offer." Gladys's eyes lit up. "Oh, Elvis, really? Well, that sounds wonderful, baby. I'd love to see it." Elvis felt a thrill of excitement and a knot of nerves. The stage was set. The secret was about to be revealed. He just hoped their reactions would be everything he dreamed of. Tomorrow, his parents would finally see their new home, a place he had found and bought with every ounce of love in his heart. The morning of March 25th, 1957, dawned with a crisp spring chill. Unusual for Memphis. Gladys was up early, bustling around the small kitchen on Audubon Drive, making coffee. She seemed a little melancholic, a quiet sadness in her eyes as she looked at their familiar surroundings. "It feels strange leaving the house all day," she murmured to Vernon, who was already at the breakfast table. "Even just for a viewing. This place has been good to us." Vernon nodded, sipping his coffee. "It has, honey, but Elvis wants us to see this new place. He's got his heart set on it." He cast a quick, knowing glance at Elvis, who was trying to look nonchalant while practically vibrating with excitement. "Remember," Mama, Elvis said, trying to keep his voice casual, "the cleaning crew is coming right after we leave. They'll pack up some of the stuff we decided we didn't need. Get it ready for sale." It was a half-truth, but a necessary one. Gladys sighed, running a hand over the back of the worn sofa. "It's just a lot of memories here." Elvis went over and put an arm around her shoulders. "I know, Mama, but we're not leaving the memories behind. We're just making room for new ones and this new place. It's going to be something special, I promise." Soon enough, the car was packed, just a small overnight bag each, as per Elvis's instructions. They piled into the car, Elvis driving Vernon in the passenger seat, and Gladys, Patsy, and Aunt Delta in the back. As they pulled away from Audubon Drive, Gladys turned for one last look, a wistful smile on her face. Elvis drove deliberately, taking a slightly circuitous route to extend the suspense, chatting about his latest recording session, anything to distract them. He could feel the anticipation building in the car, a quiet hum beneath the surface conversation. Gladys kept glancing at the unfamiliar roads, a look of growing curiosity replacing her earlier wistfulness. "Where exactly is this place, Elvis?" she asked after a while, peering through the window. "It feels like we're going quite a ways out. Just a little further, Mama," he said, trying to keep the grin off his face. "It's worth the drive, believe me." They passed through the bustling streets of Memphis, then into the quieter, more upscale suburb. Vernon, usually stoic, was craning his neck, looking around. "Well, this is a nice part of town, son." Elvis nodded, his heart beginning to pound a little faster. He knew the turn was coming up soon. This was it. The moment was almost here. He took the turn onto Highway 51 South, and a few minutes later he saw it. The elegant wrought iron gates, slightly ajar, framed by the familiar majestic white columns of Graceland, rising grandly on the hill. He slowed the car, turning into the long curving driveway. Gladys gasped. Vernon's jaw dropped. Patsy and Aunt Delta exchanged excited, conspiratorial glances in the back seat. Elvis, Gladys whispered, her voice barely audible. "What is this place?" Her eyes were wide, taking in the magnificent sight before them. The sprawling lawns, the towering trees, the sheer grandeur of the mansion. "This, Mama," Elvis said, pulling the car to a stop directly in front of the sweeping front steps, "is your new home." Gladys's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. Vernon stared, speechless, his face a mixture of shock and profound awe. The silence in the car was broken only by Gladys's quiet sobs. Elvis turned off the engine and looked at his parents, his own eyes brimming. "Happy moving day, Mama. Happy moving day, Daddy." The moment hung in the air, thick with emotion. Years of dreams, of struggles, of promises made and kept, all culminating in this single breathtaking reveal. Graceland, majestic and welcoming, stood before them, a testament to a son's unwavering love. Gladys was the first to move slowly, almost tentatively, as if afraid the magnificent vision before her might vanish. She opened the car door and stepped out, her gaze fixed on the grand white columns, the wide, inviting porch. Tears streamed down her face, but her lips were trembling with a smile. "Oh, Elvis," she whispered, It's a palace." Vernon was slower, his usually stoic face a mask of disbelief. He walked around to the front of the car, looking up at the mansion, then back at Elvis, his eyes asking, "Is this real?" "It's real, Daddy," Elvis said, his voice thick with emotion. He walked to his mother, gently taking her hand. "It's all yours, both of yours, for Mama and for Daddy." Gladys threw her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. Her sobs were louder now, but they were sobs of pure, overwhelming joy. "My boy," she choked out, "my sweet, good boy." Elvis held her tight, feeling the profound satisfaction of finally giving her something so truly special. This was more than just a house. It was the ultimate expression of his gratitude, his love, his dedication to the two people who had given him everything. He then turned to Vernon, who finally found his voice. "Elvis, I wanted to surprise you both," Elvis explained, a wide grin breaking through his own tears. "I've been looking for a place like this for a long time. A place where you could have some peace, some privacy, a true home." He led them up the wide front steps, their feet echoing softly on the stone. As he opened the majestic front door, the cool, quiet elegance of the foyer enveloped them. Gladys gasped again, her hand flying to her mouth as her eyes fell upon the magnificent stained glass peacock in the living room. "Peacock," she breathed, walking towards it, mesmerized by the burst of colors. "Oh, Elvis, it's the most beautiful thing I ever did see." Elvis watched her, his heart swelling with happiness. He took them through the main floor, explaining each room, his voice full of pride. This is the living room, Mama. You can have all your family over here. And this the dining room. Plenty of space for Thanksgiving. He led them to the spacious kitchen. And a big kitchen for all your cooking, Mama. Gladys just nodded, wiping her eyes, a look of blissful wonder on her face. She touched the contorts, ran her hand over the polished wood. It was clear she was already imagining herself in these spaces. Then he took them upstairs. And this, he said, opening the door to the master bedroom. This is your room, Mama and Daddy. Gladys walked in, her steps slow, reverent. She looked at the large windows, the fireplace, the sheer amount of space. She went to the window, looking out over the sprawling back lawn, a vast expanse of green stretching down to the trees. A small, contented sigh escaped her lips. "It's so quiet," she whispered. Vernon, who had been quietly observing, walked over to Elvis and clapped him on the shoulder, a rare display of overt emotion. His eyes were moist. "Son," he said, his voice rough with feeling, "you've outdone yourself. You truly have." Elvis felt a profound wave of relief wash over him. Their reactions were everything he had hoped for, and more. It wasn't just the grandeur that moved them. It was the love, the thought, the sacrifice behind it. "There's more," Elvis said, leading them to another part of the house. "All your things, Mama and Daddy, they're already here. The movers brought everything this morning while we were on our way. It's all set up. This is truly home now." Gladys's jaw dropped again as they walked through their new, already furnished rooms. Seeing their familiar belongings in this magnificent setting, the shock slowly morphed into a deep, abiding comfort. The house, grand as it was no longer a stranger. It was theirs. It was home. And it was all because of their beloved son, Elvis. The first few days at Graceland were a whirlwind of emotion and discovery. For Gladys and Vernon, the sheer size of the house was a delightful novelty. Gladys, despite her initial awe, quickly set about making it her own. She unpacked boxes, arranging her beloved knickknacks and family photos with meticulous care. "This vase will look lovely on the mantelpiece," she'd say, her voice light with a joy Elvis hadn't heard in a long time. She spent hours in the kitchen experimenting with the new appliances, humming old gospel tunes as she baked. The aroma of freshly baked bread and her famous chocolate pie soon filled the vast rooms, turning the mansion into a true home. Vernon, too, found his rhythm. He explored the 13 acres of grounds, marveling at the rolling hills and mature trees. He walked the perimeter, admiring the quiet privacy, and started planting a small vegetable patch by the back fence, something he'd always wanted. He found a favorite spot on the front porch, where he'd sit in a rocking chair smoking his pipe and watching the world, or rather the magnificent private world of Graceland, go by. Elvis watched them, a deep sense of satisfaction warming his chest. He saw the peace in Gladys's eyes, the quiet contentment in Vernon's demeanor. They looked like they truly belonged here, like they were finally at rest. The worries that had etched lines on Gladys's face seemed to soften, replaced by a serenity he hadn't seen in years. "Mama, you settled in okay?" He'd ask every morning, even though he could see she was thriving. "Oh, baby, it's just wonderful," she'd reply, her eyes shining. "Can hardly believe it's real, to have all this space, all this quiet. It's like a dream." One evening, Elvis found Gladys sitting alone in the living room, not watching TV or reading, just looking at the stained glass peacock, a faint smile on her lips. "What are you thinking about, Mama?" he asked softly. Sitting beside her on the grand sofa, she turned to him, her eyes still a little teary. "I was just remembering, Elvis, how we used to live in that little shack in Tupelo, with nothing but hope and a whole lot of love. And now, look at this, all because of you, baby. You did this for us." He took her hand, squeezing it gently. "It was my promise, Mama, and you and Daddy deserved it. You worked so hard, you believed in me when no one else did. This is just a small way to say thank you." Gladys shook her head. "It's a lifetime of love all poured into this house. Every corner of it feels like your love. It's more than just bricks and mortar. It's a sanctuary, It's what we always dreamed of, even when we didn't know we could dream it so big." Vernon walked in then, carrying a cup of coffee. He sat down in an armchair, looking around the grand room, then at Elvis and Gladys. A rare, wide smile spread across his face. "It's good to be home," he said simply, his gaze lingering on the flickering flames in the fireplace. Elvis leaned back, a profound sense of peace settling over him. He had houses, cars, fame, and fortune, but seeing his parents truly at home, truly happy, truly at peace in Graceland, was the greatest luxury of all. This was the real success, the real gold record. This was home, a legacy of love being built memory by memory. Within these grand walls, Graceland quickly became more than just a house. It became the heart of the Presley family. It was the constant grounding presence in Elvis's often tumultuous life. No matter how many records he sold, how many movies he filmed, or how far he traveled, he always knew he had a true home to return to. Gladys transformed Graceland into a cozy, welcoming sanctuary. Her touches were everywhere: fresh flowers from the gardens Vernon tended, the comforting aroma of home-cooked meals, and the easy laughter that now filled the grand rooms. She loved hosting family gatherings, finally having the space to bring together all her sisters and cousins for boisterous dinners and lively card games. The house, once a stately mansion, now truly lived and breathed with the warmth of a loving family. Vernon, content in his role as the master of the grounds, spent his days tending to the vast property. He built a small, well-manicured garden, planted fruit trees, and took pride in keeping the lawns immaculate. Quiet privacy of Graceland was a blessing to him, allowing him to unwind and simply enjoy the peace. He would often be found on the front porch watching the sunset, a serene look on his face. For Elvis, Graceland was his refuge. After grueling tours or demanding film shoots, he would race home, eager to shed the persona of the king of rock and roll and simply be Gladys and Vernon's son. He loved the quiet evenings there, playing his guitar in the music room, or simply sitting with his parents talking for hours about simple things. He'd watch movies with them in the living room, laughing at old comedies, feeling completely at ease. The house bore witness to so much. Elvis's moments of creative inspiration, his triumphs, his quiet struggles. It was where he brought his friends, his future wife, Priscilla, and later his daughter, Lisa Marie. It became a place of shared joy, of growth, and of deep familial connection. Graceland wasn't just a symbol of Elvis's success. It was a testament to his profound love for his parents. Every room, every acre, whispered of his gratitude, of the promise he'd made to them in the lean years in Tupelo. He had wanted to give them the best, and he had done exactly that. He had given them a home that provided security, comfort, and most importantly, an abundance of love. As the years went by, Graceland stood as a beacon of stability for the Presley family. It was where they celebrated Christmases, where birthdays were marked with joy, and where they found solace in times of sorrow. It was the place where Gladys felt truly at peace, until her passing just a few years later. Even after her death, Graceland remained the central point, a constant reminder of the love that built it. Elvis never forgot the feeling of bringing his parents to Graceland for the first time, seeing the tears in Gladys's eyes and the awe on Vernon's face. It was one of the most rewarding moments of his life. He had built a dynasty, yes, but more importantly, he had built a home, a true home, filled with grace and enduring love. And so the story of Graceland became inextricably linked with the story of Elvis Presley, not just as a global icon, but as a devoted son who poured his heart and soul into creating a lasting legacy of love for his beloved parents. It wasn't just a mansion. It was a monument to family, to dreams fulfilled, and to the powerful, enduring bond between a boy and his mama and daddy. It was and would forever be their special place, their sanctuary, their Graceland.